I call for the statement Shadow Secretary State, Chris Philps.
Thank you. To ask the Home Secretary to make a statement on her recently announced immigration policy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, the British public expect and deserve an immigration system with order and control. In November, the Home Secretary announced the most sweeping reforms to tackle illegal migration since the Second World War. And last week, the Government took concrete steps to implement these necessary changes. I hear very clearly the strong message from the Chair, Madam Deputy Speaker, and of course would never mean any discourtesy to yourself or to your colleagues. Features of the steps taken last week include that refugee status will be now reviewed every 30 months. At a 30-month review, refugees with a continuing need of protection will have this protection renewed, while those who no longer have a protection need will be expected to return home. Further, we are introducing targeted measures known as a visa break to help protect the integrity of the UK immigration system. As such, from the 26th of March, we will refuse applications for specific visa routes from nationals of Afghanistan, Cameroon, Myanmar and Sudan, where evidence shows a consistently high number and proportion of visa-linked asylum claims. This is the beginning, and other nationalities may face similar measures in the future. Due to the number of asylum claims from nationals of Nicaragua and St. Lucia, we have also introduced visit visa requirements and direct ASI transit visa requirements on these countries to prevent visitor visa misuse. These came into force on the 5th of March. We have tabled further legislative changes to revoke the current legal duty to provide support to asylum seekers, instead restoring this to a power to provide support so that those who can support themselves do so. And we're also amending existing conditions of support legislation to enable the suspension or discontinuation of asylum support when an asylum seeker is working illegally. And we've started a consultation on our approach to family returns, exploring reforms to the support available to families with no legal basis to remain in the UK, and the approach used when enforcing the returns of families who have not departed voluntarily. Madam Deputy Speaker, after years of chaos and crisis, it has fallen to this government to fix the broken systems we inherited. I know this country. I know the protection that people want to provide to those who need it. We've seen that with the Syrian scheme, Afghan resettlement, Hong Kong BNO and Homes for Ukraine. But we can only do this where there is confidence that the system has order and control. These reforms restore this order and build the system the British people deserve.
Shadow Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, it is disappointing the government did not come here voluntarily to announce their policies, and I noticed there was no apology. But given the scale of their failure, it is not surprising. Since the election, 67,000 people have entered the UK illegally, a 45% increase compared to the same period before. Many of those 67,000 have since committed serious crimes, including murder and rape. In the last 6 days alone, 900 illegal immigrants have crossed the English Channel, and the government's promises lie in tatters. The gangs are not smashed. The French are not intercepting boats near the shores, as we were promised last year. And last year, the so-called one-in, one-out deal saw 41,000 illegal immigrants come in across the Channel and only 300 go out. So, the government is now resorting to bribing illegal immigrants with £40,000 per family to leave. That is more than most working people here earn in a year. British workers should not have to pay record high taxes for this government to give their money away to illegal immigrants. It is frankly disgraceful. Instead, the government should now agree to our plan to leave the ECHR, which would enable them to rapidly deport all illegal immigrants. The crossings would then quickly stop and there would be no need to bribe illegal immigrants to leave. Let me turn now to ILR. When we proposed a 10-year path, the government voted against it. But I'm delighted they've now done yet another U-turn and adopted our policy. Now, while we don't agree with every detail in their plans, we do agree with the substance. But I'm sorry to hear some of the minister's own MPs are apparently unconvinced. So let me help the minister. Given the government appears to need our votes to pass these ILR changes, we will support them. Will the minister confirm the ILR changes will be made in primary legislation or via the rules? If they do use primary legislation, that will take some time to pass, by which time the 2021 and 22 arrivals will have ILR. So we would also support him to pass emergency legislation if he will accept that offer.
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it is a challenge to be lectured on the need for apologies from the architect of Trussonomics that mean that my constituents month on month pay more on their mortgages. But we've seen more of that mathematics from the right honourable gentleman there, because he says that £158,000 that on average we spend on families in hotel accommodation who have no right now to be here because they have finished their way through the asylum system, that spending that money is better value than spending £40,000 in order for them to return home and to build their lives. Again, I'm not surprised. He talks about gangs. Well, he will know there have been a record level of interventions, more than 4,000. He talks about our work with the French, but he'll know too there's been 40,000 preventions of crossings. He'll know too, he mentioned returns. Well, 60,000 people have been returned under this government, a 31% increase under his time when he was in the Home Department. So he offers criticism, but the only answer that he offers in lieu is just to tear up international agreements with no sense of what change that would drive. It would merely set back that returns work and just leave us back to years and years of debate and no action. I won't do that. He mentions ILR. Of course, that wasn't the nature of the announcements last week. That was a consultation that closed, a very important one, about earned settlement in this country. We'll be having those conversations with Parliament, and those, of course, will be laid in the usual way in the weeks, months ahead.
Meg Hillier.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I wonder if the Minister could update us on the discussions about people who have got leave that they arrived in a country, were pursuing leave for 5 years to get status in the UK or for whichever period of their visa, who are approaching the end of that period. I have a number of constituents concerned their visa they'll reach this point in April, and they're concerned that they will have to start all over again under a new process. Could you update the House on this issue?
I believe, again, the honourable member refers to earned settlement. It has always been the case that the immigration rules in force at the point of application rather than the point of entry to the country are the ones that are germane with regards to the conditions an individual has to meet. Nevertheless, the Honourable Lady will know that we did consult about what transition protections there could be. That consultation closed last month. There is, an important reality for all colleagues to wrestle with here, that we saw in the first 5 years of this decade unprecedented levels of migration through legal means. The open borders experiment by colleagues opposite, which means that 1 in 30 people in this country came in that window of time. That means, at the same time, those people will become eligible for social housing, for benefits and whatnot. That, of course, is a significant challenge to the taxpayer and to public services. But nevertheless, that consultation took place and will be coming back in the usual way.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Will Forster.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is deeply disappointing that these changes were pushed through without an explanation in this chamber. The same Home Secretary who emphasised the importance of scrutiny from MPs at the IPPR also denied this House the chance to question her reforms. That is not good enough. Does the Minister think that reviewing each refugee status every 2.5 years for 20 years will really fix the asylum system? That is estimated to cost £725 million over the next decade. Can the Minister confirm what plans the Government has to fund this, and can they give a cast-iron guarantee that it won't cause the asylum backlog to go further? Taxpayers are paying £6 million a day for asylum hotels, the legacy from the Conservative government. Will the Minister back Liberal Democrat plans to end the processing by faster claims, such as Nightingale processing centres, or set out their own plan? And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, will the Government confirm their plan for lifting the ban on asylum seekers working? Why have they chosen a year, not 6 months?
Order, Minister.
I'm grateful for that question. I am surprised the honourable gentleman doesn't remember the statement in November on these very issues. I can assure him his colleague on the Liberal Democrat front bench remembers it very well, and I think thinks about it quite a bit. On the 30 months, let's be clear about how the system will work. What we are saying is we do not want people to come to the country and get that good news of their claim being accepted for refuge and then be at home and not take part in British life. We are saying that if people do that, then their claims will be assessed every 30 months. Instead, they will be offered the chance to move to a protected work and study route, which means that if they are taking part in work, taking part in study, learning the language, not committing crimes, then they're out with of that. So I don't recognise the points on how many decisions would have to be made or the spend. That isn't accurate. But what I also would say, because he talks about quicker decisions, well, last year was the best year since records began in terms of decision-making for initial decisions. So we are operating that system effectively, but nevertheless, there are significant demand issues, which means that applications across the EU are down significantly and in the UK are up significantly. And until and unless you address those issues, any process changes simply will be overwhelmed.
John McDonnell.
Can I ask, has the government done any assessment of those people who, as other colleagues have said, have come here under one system, but now the system is changing, and where those people are actually working at the moment? Because in my constituency, there's large numbers of people who've come here and now in their 4th year before they were about to then conclude, hopefully then to secure status, and they're working in the care sector. And without them, to be frank, the care sector would collapse in my constituency.
Minister.
Yes, we do know where they are working because the nature by which they came to this country was on work visas. So we're very clear where they are. In terms of the assessment, that was the point of the consultation that took place that ended last month. We got more than 200,000 responses to it. I think that shows the strength of feeling. So we're looking at that in the usual way, and we'll come back with our plans after that in the usual way.
Father of the House, Sir Edward Leigh.
May I quote approvingly the remarks of my constituency neighbour, the Labour MP for Bassetlaw, who said that if Labour is to win their battle against reform, they have to do much more on illegal boats. I'm sorry she's not here, but I have warned her I'm going to ask this question. And she says specifically a very good point that people should only be allowed to claim asylum abroad. Now, if that was the case, surely there's an argument that if they arrived here illegally, they would not be able to claim asylum, they would not be covered by the Convention, and they could be detained and deported.
Minister.
Well, I would agree with the right honourable gentleman in that I always agree with the honourable member for Bassetlaw. I've known her for a very long time and have found being disagreeable to her a bad idea. But on the principle too, we said as part of our statement in November, the 3rd chapter is about opening up safe and legal routes. The Home Secretary has talked about our first foray into this endeavour with regards to a study route, that providing those options for people to come and seek sanctuary in this country to the degree to which our communities can sustain it out of country so they don't make those dangerous journeys, so we're not seeing people cross the channel. Well, I think that's in everybody's interests, and I'm glad to see that is drawing consensus.
Imran Hussain.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituent came to this country leaving a very good job, uprooting his whole family and young children on the promise that he would be allowed to come here, work and contribute in our NHS, which he has done for the last 4 years. But now, because of the government's harsh, hostile policies, he's left in a place where not only is his future uncertain, his children may not even be able to go to university. Does the Minister not understand the hostility and unfairness of this?
I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman's question, and I would recognise, I think all of us would recognise the absolute importance that people coming from outside of the UK have played in the NHS for decades now. He will know that in our proposals that we set out with regards to earned settlement, that working for the NHS and working in public services was one of the proposed ways in which you could earn down that route to settlement. I say to him, as I've said to other colleagues, we're looking at the consultation closely. We do have to understand there is a real challenge that sits beneath this. And again, that it's always been the immigration rules at the point of application, not at the point of entry, that have applied. But nevertheless, I hear the point he's made and other colleagues have made with vigour.
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Karen Bradley.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Could the Minister tell us whether the Home Office has made an assessment of the number of people who will be affected and the amount that will be saved from moving from a statutory duty to a discretionary power to support asylum seekers?
Minister.
I'm grateful for that question from the Chair of the Select Committee. The overall supported population is 107,000. Within that, there is a cohort of approximately half of those whose decision is now more than a year old. So they are able to access work in many cases. Similarly, there is a smaller proportion whom retained that right to work because they've overstayed their work visas. We are now doing the work of looking at all those people individually to see who that could work and therefore pay towards their own cost of support on the basis that, you know, if you can pay for your own support, like our own constituents, you ought to, so that doesn't fall on the taxpayer and we can reduce that burden.
Ruth Cadbury.
Madam Deputy Speaker, in my constituency, people of all faiths and backgrounds live, learn and work next to each other. And unlike many other European countries, the UK has a really good reputation on integration. So can the Minister reassure me that these reforms will not lead to the UK becoming like some of our European neighbours who have much poorer records on integration?
I'm grateful for that question. I absolutely can. And as she spoke about her community there, I saw my own community in that as well. All of our reforms are around promoting integration. So, for example, as I say, with regards to illegal migration, promoting that people come, who when they do come to the country to seek refuge and have an accepted claim, that they enter work, they enter study, that they learn the language, which is crucial for integration. But I also know, we have important work to do across government, of which the Home Department has an important component around social cohesion more generally, and later on there'll be a statement from the Community Secretary along those lines about that important cohesion work, so we can be that brilliant, integrated, multicultural country that I know Nottingham is, I know Hounslow is, and I know the rest of the country is.
Sir Roger Gale.
Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, there are thousands of Ukrainians in this country, most of them women and children, who effectively are stateless. They didn't come here as asylum seekers. They came here as refugees. They don't know whether they're coming or going. They can't return to their own country. There is no prospect in the short to medium term of them being able to. They need to be able to determine accommodation, education and employment. So what's the government going to do to create some sort of proper settled status for Ukrainian refugees?
Minister.
I'm grateful for that question. I mean, it is really important that colleagues appreciate that the Homes for Ukraine scheme and the way by which people came to this country from Ukraine was never intended as a settlement scheme. That was part of our engagement with the government of Ukraine at the time. Nevertheless, we have, as the Honourable Gentleman know, have extended that period of protection longer in line with the challenges that he says faces. We want those people to be able to live fully whilst they're here. I hear the challenges that he makes, but as I say, that scheme was never designed as a settlement scheme.
Andy McDonnell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Minister for his statement. On the issue of work visas and on the issue of people being integrated into our communities, could he just say something about the abuses that we hear about how sponsors control the situation for those people and the potential damage that will be caused, especially to our public services, if we see those thresholds being unattainable by many of our key workers, especially in our health service?
I absolutely do recognise the characterisation that my honourable friend offers there. We know that there was abuse of that scheme by unscrupulous employers. We've been working, indeed, I met with trade unions only this morning, with trade unions about what a future model could look like to avoid that, so that if people do come to this country, they're not so precariously reliant on one employer, who therefore has a very, very unhelpful power imbalance over them and their lives. So we are looking at that very, very closely.
Kimberley.
In Afghanistan, women and girls are being persecuted on the grounds of their gender. They cannot work, they cannot study. By law, their husbands can punish them however they see fit. And last year, the Home Office closed safe and legal routes for Afghan women to come to the UK. And last week, they closed the door both for professionals and students. The work of the Linda Norgrove Foundation means that a number of female medical students are currently studying at Scottish universities, including St Andrews. What hope is there for others to complete their studies and support the maternal healthcare crisis that is currently underway in Afghanistan?
Minister.
I mean, we take our obligations and our commitment to Afghanis very, very seriously. Since 2021, over 37,000 Afghans have come via resettlement schemes. What we've changed as of last week is that we have a student visa system that is being used as a de facto immigration system, which cannot be right. You know, what we saw with Afghanistan students is that of the 3,730 visa issued, there have been 3,454 claims for asylum at some point during them. That is not an orderly system. I say, you know, I feel the power and the passion with which the Honourable Lady speaks, but to accept that premise is to say that we believe that universities ought to set our asylum system. That can't be right. So taken in, I hope she would say, she would recognise that taken in concert with what we have announced with regards to a safe and legal study route, that must be a much better way. So we as a government and accountable to Parliament know who's coming, what their protection need is, what their institution is and what they're learning while they're here. I think that that's the right balance.
Members should be aware I'm hoping to finish this statement around 4:30 because we do have three statements. So if people could keep their questions and answers short. Afzal Khan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Boo Bob Centre has found that the restrictive policies have had an insignificant effect on the number of unaccompanied children seeking asylum in Denmark. Instead, the discrimination and constant uncertainty makes it harder for young refugees to learn, build relationships, or plan for their futures. So will the Minister commit to keeping the 5 years leave for unaccompanied children permanently to create stability for the most vulnerable asylum seekers?
I can give my honourable friend succour in that regard. Our 30-month protection announcement last week does not include unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. We take our responsibilities to children very seriously. I have optimism within our new system. Nevertheless, though, we need those children to be entering into study and then into work and learning the language. Of course, they've got the most to benefit from it. So our work with the protected work and study route will be particularly important for them.
Simon Hall.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister and the Government is to be commended for trying to wrestle with this issue, and where there can be cross-party consensus, let's build on that and foster. There's lots of groups of people who come to this country who generate complaints. One group that isn't are those who come from New Zealand and Australia to help our sheep farmers at shearing time. Could I really urge the Minister to rethink that? There's not a single rural member of Parliament who's calling for this. They should be allowed in. This is an animal welfare issue and it's important for our food security and agricultural sector.
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the announcements we made in November, as I say, were the most sweeping to illegal migration since the Second World War. They were unpacked last week as well, but they weren't so sweeping or broad that they had sheep shearing in them, though I know that elsewhere that has become a pertinent point. I'm having conversations, as my honourable friend, the Minister for Migration and Citizenship is, with rural MPs, and he will hear very clearly the honourable gentleman's words.
Alex Serble.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In response to the urgent question, the Minister didn't mention the announcement last week that 4 countries will no longer be able to apply for student visas: Sudan, Afghanistan, Myanmar and Cameroon. Many of the students who applied came and studied, and the situation in their country materially changed and then applied for asylum. I'm very concerned that when things materially change, we will change policy on student applications. We're seeing a war in the Middle East now. We've got Ukraine. I'm really concerned that this is the government's policy now. We should take it in good faith that people are coming to study, contribute, and then when things are settled in their country, can go back and contribute there. We should not be cutting off student visas for those countries who are in conflict.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I mean, I hate to correct the honourable friend, but I did mention those in my opening. I totally accept. Everybody, no matter what the reforms that we announced in November, any element of it, how that impacts them, everybody will have their claim individually assessed on the basis of their own individual circumstances. I accept totally that an individual, if you come on a 3-year course, the circumstances at home could materially change during that period of time. What I will say gently to the honourable gentleman is when that is happening in virtually every one of the cases, those systems seek to merely be a study route and are a de facto asylum route, and it's better that that is something organised and coordinated by the government rather than academic institutions.
Kirsty Blackman.
The Minister is unhappy that we are conflating two different announcements. The issue is that the Home Secretary hasn't actually made an announcement about this one. She hasn't come to the Chamber and told us what the position is and what the announcement is. And they are planning to do this without parliamentary approval. It's not going to come to the House for debate when they make these changes. Will the Minister commit to ensuring that everybody in this House is able to have a voice, that these are not put through by negative statutory instrument, and that MPs across the House will be able to make our points clear and ensure that refugees will not have the goalposts moved after they have arrived?
I hate to disagree with the honourable lady, but I'm not unhappy at all. The way I look at it, I get to do the answers. Honourable colleagues and right honourable colleagues get to do the questions. I don't get to do them both. So colleagues raise whatever they wish to. On the point of scrutiny of these policies, well, as you will be aware, that has been a very well participated public consultation. There also was debate. There were two statements in November, one relating to restoring order and control, our asylum policy statement, and one relating to earned settlement. Colleagues had the opportunity then. She will know there's been subsequently been at least one debate in Westminster Hall. I'm sure there will be more. I have no doubt that colleagues will find their parliamentary opportunities to debate these policies and any others of the Home Department.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. On the issue of indefinite leave to remain, the Minister from the dispatch box says that there will be close consideration of the public consultation that concluded last month, and yet last week the Home Secretary was saying that she is determined to push ahead with those changes to retrospective indefinite leave to remain. This is about people who are working here. This is about people who are contributing in many ways, not just financially. Which one of those is true?
Minister. I'm grateful to my honourable friend. We were very clear at the outset of the consultation that there were certain elements that we had decided prior to. First of all, that we're moving to a system with the default 10 years that could be reduced down to 5 years, provided on the contribution that people made to their community, and also on matters relating to speaking the English language that we thought were non-negotiable. But within the consultation were a question of transitional protections as well. So we're looking at all of those things in the round, and I don't see an inconsistency in those two positions.
Sir Desmond Swain. Where will he send an illegal entrant with no right to remain, but whose country of origin is unsafe? That's the question.
Minister. Well, the honourable gentleman will know that we as a government have removed 60,000 people with no right to be in this country, a 31% increase on our predecessors. It is not impossible to effect return in every case. Everybody knows that. There are certain countries from which we are unable to do so, and in those cases we aren't effecting returns, but we have to have a system that has a backstop of removal, and I think that that's an accepted principle.
I do acknowledge a considerable challenge that the government has in winning back public confidence in the asylum system. But on the 30 months, the Home Office published a report last year concluding that there was insufficient evidence that restrictive asylum policies reduce claims. So will the Home Office publish evidence to show that cutting refugee leave down from 5 years to 30 months will deter claims in the UK? And does he accept that a substantial settlement pathway of 20 years plus is unlikely to deter those claims either?
Minister.
I'm grateful for that question. The honourable gentleman knows we bring forward our impact assessments alongside the policies as we publish them, as we seek to debate them or implement them. He knows, obviously, the case we made in our document in November as well. With regards to whether these policies work or not, I would gently say that, for example, Germany has a similar period of time for protection, as does Denmark, both of whom are seeing reductions in asylum claims. Asylum claims in the UK now are over 80,000 for the last 2 years. For the previous decade, they averaged 27,500. I don't think saying that no change is an option.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My constituent is a hard-working taxpayer, yet his wife and daughter remain in Iran because the family reunion route has effectively been closed since September. Does the Minister accept that failing to provide controlled, safe and legal routes not only lets down families like this, but also fuels the use of dangerous routes?
I'm grateful for that question. That route is paused for now. The Honourable Lady will know that over the last 4 or 5 years we've seen a huge increase. I think it's about 5 times increase in the use of that route. It is right that, given significant changes, the government makes sure that those systems are effective. We're looking at it closely. We appreciate the importance of family reunion, and she will have heard what I've said on safe and legal means.
Go Snell. Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Can the Minister say what changes he expects to see happening to the national referral mechanism as part of these changes in relation to modern slavery? And with the switch from a duty to a power for housing people waiting for asylum, what does that mean for the national dispersal method, including for places like Stoke-on-Trent, which have routinely had more than was agreed? And if there's no changes, will he look at funding integration work in those places? Minister.
I'm grateful for that question. The Honourable Gentleman will know my work in this place on modern slavery over the years. We know that is a constantly moving picture. We want to make sure that the protections that I think are consensus in this place for victims of slavery are robust ones, and that system is being used properly. I take his point, the Department's view on dispersal is full dispersal, so that communities share that challenge across the means. And with regards to payments, we pay £1,200 per head to help that integration work.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Paying illegal asylum seekers £40,000 to leave the United Kingdom is a kick in the teeth to my hard-working constituents in Broxbourne. Why aren't we using that money to build a detention centre so we can detain and immediately deport those who arrive in this country illegally?
So this is funny, Mr Speaker, because when the Honourable Gentleman was in my office saying that he wanted his hotel closed, he was saying, make sure we get a Grimgam closed. And then when he sees the proposals that do it, he doesn't want them. I don't think you can do those two things together.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We see the reports of armed criminal gangs operating with confidence along France's northern coastline. My constituents ask what is actually being done by the French authorities to deal with it. Can the Minister give an update on the ongoing discussions he's having with his French counterparts and what will change on the back of these reforms?
Minister.
This is an important point. Those gangs are well embedded. They got a good 6+ year head start on this government. It is not easy for French authorities. We work very closely with them. It's the matter of the Sandhurst Agreement. We have seen 40,000 preventions, but we are working now. We're in active negotiations with them now about where we go next to tackle that pernicious threat.
Speaker, aside from the cruelty of asking people who fled war and persecution to re-justify their already recognised refugee status every 30 months, I'd like to hear from the Minister how he is planning to pay for this huge additional administrative burden. As we've heard, the Refugee Council has estimated it'll cost £725 million over 10 years. He contests this estimate, so perhaps he can tell us how much he thinks it will cost, and why, when our NHS and schools are crying out for funding, is he spending money, taxpayers' money, scapegoating migrants instead?
Minister.
I gently say to the Honourable Lady that we won't be asking those who come to the country, have a protection need, who enter into work and study, who learn the language, who don't commit crimes, we won't be asking them to re-justify their protection need. I think that that's the right balance between the taxpayer and the individual. I don't accept and I don't recognise those figures. In terms of cost, this is about recognising that we in this country support a significantly bigger supported population than we have traditionally. That number needs to reduce. We have to break that attractiveness, and that's why we've proposed the reforms we have.
Thank
you, Mr Speaker. The Home Secretary last week mentioned that our immigration policy needed to be based on the idea of fairness. But is it fair to change the rules on indefinite leave to remain for those who are already making a contribution to our society and came here under the old rules? Will the Minister give those individuals some assurance that they will get some transitional protection?
I'm grateful for that question. On the point of fairness, applying the system as it has always been applied, and as I say, that has always been at the point of application, not the point of entry. So I don't accept that in itself is a lack of fairness. Nevertheless, I've heard the point that he and colleagues have made, and that's why we had the consultation in the way that we did.
Sir Julian Smith.
I've often had occasions when somebody has leaked in advance the contents or part of the contents of a statement they're going to make to the House of Commons. But this is the first time that I've had a total revelation in the press of something they had no intention of making a statement about to the House of Commons. Why is that, and what will these measures do to deter people from breaking into this country illegally and then it being impossible to deport them?
Minister. In terms of the deterrence point, we, as I say, recognise that we are receiving applications at an unprecedented level at a time when the European Union counterparts are seeing fewer applications. There is an attractiveness to this country. That's why we're making the change to the protection package we've made. That's why we're doing the record levels of enforcement around illegal working to break that pull as well. So those are the changes we're making to break those pull factors to this country. On the point on announcements, we would mean no discourtesy to this House. Of course we wouldn't, and you will have heard the apology I made in the statement at the outset. But I would also say, we stated our policy in November, and what we're now doing is building that out.
Gainsborough. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. South Norfolk expects for our immigration system to be fair, open and transparent. The one problem that we've now come across, unfortunately, is a lot of confusion online and expertly shown by the Shadow Home Secretary in the Chamber. Can the Minister clarify that the process that we're looking at going for will actually save $20 million to the taxpayer instead of spending money to keep open asylum hotels?
Minister. Well, this is exactly right. With regards to family returns, and, I hear from the opposition benches that they would rather pay a family an average of £158,000 to stay in a hotel with no prospect of staying in the country, or rather than pay that £40,000. But the honourable gentleman is exactly right. On the pilot, there's 150 families in that pilot. If we were successful with all of them, that would save the British taxpayer £20 million. I think we'd be doing right by them in doing so.
Sel Roberts.
Yesterday we marked International Women's Day with a statistic that women hold fewer than 2/3 of the rights enjoyed by men globally. Afghan women are already barred from secondary and higher education, and they now face further violence and discrimination from the Taliban's new criminal regulations. What's the Secretary of State done? But she is stopping them from applying to study in our universities. Does he not agree that the aim of ending violence against women and girls extends beyond boundaries, and his government has a moral duty to help women fulfil their potential in safety?
Minister. I totally agree with that. That's why we've offered sanctuary to over 37,000 Afghans via resettlement schemes since 2021. That's before those who have come via the asylum system. The point of difference between she and I don't think is on the substance. It's whether those sorts of routes to provide sanctuary to people who want to study and have their protection be needed, that they should be run by universities on our behalf without the scrutiny of Parliament rather than the government itself, and I can't agree with that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for his updates. And the Home Secretary last week was absolutely right that the public expect a controlled and orderly immigration system, and I fully support her plans. But can the Minister say more about how quickly the measures announced will be implemented and how the Home Office will ensure that they are properly enforced in practice?
I know that the public are eager to see change. We were able to make some immediate changes in November when we announced the policies. We've tabled statutory instruments on last Thursday that we hope will affect further changes. Similarly, we made changes to the immigration rules last week and will do at future opportunities where need arises. And of course, where there is, with particular reference to important appeals reform, the need for primary legislation, that will come in front of the House in the usual way.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The only country that successfully tackled a similar illegal boats crossings to ours is Australia. And it tackled that not by paying people £40,000 a family to leave, but by sending them to a safe third country. I noticed the Minister completely failed to answer the question from the member from New Forest West. Does he accept reality that it's the only way we're going to tackle this problem, and when they get on with having a safe third country to deport these people to?
Minister. Well, the honourable gentleman, I follow his work. The honourable gentleman always says no to large sites. He says no to hotels and then proposes fantastical third countries that he's not capable of naming. Ultimately, this is the choice. This is the choice. Do you want fantasy? Do you want more empty rhetoric and argument, or do you want change in action with this government? I know what I choose.
Bruce Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Along with Home Affairs Select Committee colleagues, I spent time in northern France last year seeing the challenges of intercepting small boats. The French maritime doctrine has clearly been an obstacle to adopting the more assertive tactics that my constituents wish and expect to see. Can he outline the progress in getting the French to change their tactics, and will he make continuation of Sandhurst funding dependent upon that?
From my perspective, Mr. Speaker, with regards to action at northern France, what works is what works. And, it's a matter of record, have enthusiasm around maritime doctrine type tactics, but there are other ones prior that need to work as well, particularly with our work with them to disrupt organised crime, which is having significant impact. He mentioned Sandhurst, which we are in the process of negotiating at the moment, and I absolutely assure him all of that will be seen through the prism of bringing forward effective action.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the government is serious about stopping dangerous small boats crossings and smashing the guns, there must be safe routes for those fleeing war and persecution. And I remind the House that bombs are falling right now in the Gulf and in the Middle East. What progress has the Home Secretary made on establishing safe and legal routes for refugees so that people do not risk their lives crossing the Channel?
Well, the Honourable Lady will know from our announcements in November that we absolutely believe in safe and legal alternatives. She will know that the one-in-one work with France is itself a safe and legal route. She will also know of the announcements we've made around a refugee study route. So, yes, we are getting on with those, alongside the difficult decisions that we've made in front of Parliament as well, in that balance to disrupt that model and change those behaviours from irregular and dangerous to safe and legal.
Thompson. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like many towns, Long Eaton is home to an asylum seeker hotel. It was gifted to us by the last Tory government, but I know the Minister is doing everything in his power to close it as soon as possible. A secondary effect, though, from the Tories' hotels is illegal work associated with the exploitation of local asylum seekers. Can the Minister elaborate on how measures announced recently will help end illegal work in Erewash?
We know from the materials of the traffickers that illegal working is one of those advertising features used to suggest to people that they ought to come and try to come to the UK. The impact of that is then felt in communities like Long Eaton and means that we've got hotels open. So we are changing that equation. We've extended the powers around illegal working to the gig economy now in the Borders Act. That is now coming into force so that the message is very clear. You won't be able to employ people illegally. You won't be able to work illegally.
Mr. Speaker, we learned from the press, if not from the Minister, that up to £40,000 of taxpayers' money will be used to reward illegal activity. Doesn't that make a mockery of the law? And wouldn't it be far better to withdraw from the ECHR so that we can deport people who have no basis to be here?
I mean, it is tricky because the Honourable Gentleman talks with power and vigour that was lacking from his colleagues in their 14 years in government. Indeed, the Honourable Gentleman may well know, as certain colleagues on the front bench certainly know, that they themselves paid people to leave the country because it's in the taxpayers' interest. So there's choices between measures that work or measures like leaving the ECHR, which are fantastical and would just lead to years and years of arguing, disruption and no impact.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are some who say that this government is controlling our borders in spite of our progressive values. No, Mr. Speaker, we are securing our borders because it is in line with our Labour values. In my constituency, residents want to feel safe, and they do not feel safe with our controlled borders not yet there. So, wanting to tackle illegal acts, will the Minister set out what this government is doing to stop illegal working, particularly within Deliveroo, Just Eat and Uber Eats?
And the Honourable Gentleman is right. I make the exact same assessment of Nottingham as I do in Bournemouth, that those are people who lent into Afghan scheme, Syrian scheme, Hong Kong BNO, Homes for Ukraine, but are rightly fed up that there's 3 hotels in Bournemouth and the impact that that has on their community, and the Honourable Gentleman's vigour in working for their closure is well known. So I totally accept that. With regards to illegal working, so people aren't using those facilities, we've brought in new punishments that mean that if those who work in the gig economy are using the substitution of their labour in order to circumvent legal working rules, that they are caught and punished, and we're doing that at record levels.
Mr. Speaker, at lunchtime today I chaired a meeting of the APPG on fishing, during which we heard about existential threats to the fishing industry across these islands. Will the Minister agree to come to a meeting of the APPG so they can hear at first hand some of these threats because of the immigration policies of his party?
Minister. Well, I would be sure that the subject of the meeting earlier wasn't how to help people work illegally in the fishing industry, as he knows we're discussing today. But, of course, I'm always open to meet with colleagues to hear about their important work and what they want to see from the government.
government's focus on closing the hotels, and I'm really delighted that the last remaining hotel in my Telford constituency, which was opened by the Conservatives opposite, will be closing in the coming weeks. Yeah. But will the Minister recommit the effort of the Home Office to recover the excess profits that were made by the providers of those contracts which were so badly negotiated by the last government?
Well, the honourable gentleman times it perfectly, just as the Chancellor joins me, for me to say of the tens of millions that we've recouped from those contracts, not to mention the hundreds of millions reduction now because of our improvement with regards to hotels. Nevertheless, all of them will be closed, opened by the Tories, closed by Labour.
Mr. Speaker, and actually it's useful to raise that because lots of the migrants are going into HMOs, which is a real problem in my constituency. Both I and my Liberal Democrat-run council have raised concerns about what the impact is for our community, but also where people are being placed. These have been raised with Serco, and Serco are ignoring the concerns. Will the Minister meet with me so I can discuss these concerns both by me and the council, because my community are really concerned?
Minister. Yeah, of course I will. I want to see equitable dispersal. I'm desperately trying to close the gap between the Home Office and local government so that there is better information sharing. Local authorities shouldn't be surprised. There should be an early conversation about a possible site in their community, not because they'll have a veto, but because they may have a better way of doing things. I'll have that meeting with him happily.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know the Minister will agree with me it's important that we have a working and fair immigration system, but that is not something that we sadly inherited. Constituents of mine in Harlow are rightly concerned that people come here to settle are law-abiding. Will he agree with me that if they are not, then they won't?
I totally agree with that. He can assure people in Harlow that every element of our system will incentivise people to come here and follow the rules. And if they don't, that will be a bar to citizenship. That will be a bar for them getting what they want from our settlement system. And that is the right balance for the British people to make sure that our generosity is not abused.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very perplexed, and I suspect most Brits would be perplexed. We have more than 650,000 job vacancies, of which more than 165,000 are for unskilled workers. Why aren't we dealing with the refugees, processing their applications, giving them training, putting them into job and earning some money as opposed to paying for their hotel costs?
Minister. Well, the honourable gentleman will have heard earlier that that we are now in the Home Office making decisions at a quicker rate than ever without affecting the grant rate. So we are making those quick decisions so those who need protection can build their lives in this country. What I can't accept, and he may well have seen the previous session when we were talking about young people in Britain out of work, that so many young people in Britain be out of work and we don't have the aspiration for them to fill roles.
Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents want the government to get off their back and get on their side, not to use their hard-earned taxpayers' money to spend up to £40,000 to remove illegal asylum seekers. Will the Minister rule this out?
Well, the honourable gentleman's heard what I've said to his colleagues. The choice is between paying £158,000 for those families to live in hotels or £40,000 for those families to leave the country. I don't know if he needs a calculator, but I think that that's a good equation.
Christian Jolly.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister tell us what modelling work the Home Office has done on whether these visa bans will actually affect the backlog of refugee and asylum seekers? And have they looked at the impact on local services in constituencies like mine, where care homes tell me they're losing workforce, vital workforce, and may not be able to stay open?
Well, of course, we take a lens on reform. She will know that with regards to those seeking asylum, they can't be working in those environments, so they wouldn't be germane for that conversation. But we look very closely at the impacts of our policies and publish those reviews at the appropriate moments.
Greg Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The concept of paying someone who has come here illegally £40,000 to leave will stick in the throats of all taxpayers in this country. But notwithstanding the arguments the Minister has put forward, what assessment has he made that making that 40 grand offer won't act as a huge pull factor and cause more people to come here to collect our cash?
Minister.
Well, first of all, I can offer some degree of comfort to the honourable gentleman. This is a targeted pilot at this stage, so it couldn't act as a pull factor because people wouldn't be eligible for it. But I can also say that other countries, including Denmark, who offer this, are seeing their numbers go down. So I think that can give him a degree of comfort too.
Dr. Ben Spencer.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister's failed to answer the question by the members from New Forest West and Bexhill and Battle. In the absence of a third country scheme, where do we remove people to where there are no safe countries or returns agreements?
Minister.
Well, as I've said to his colleagues, for a start, Rwanda would not have removed those people. It would have removed a tiny portion at an eye-watering cost. We are ramping up removals for those who have no right to be here. But if what the honourable gentleman is really saying is that he wants to rip up the ECHR because he wants to send those people back to countries that aren't safe, he should name which ones.
Mr. Speaker, alongside these announcements last week was the announcement, most welcome, that BNO passport holders will not be required for the B2 language qualifications. But my Wimborne, Hong Kong residents are really concerned about the income threshold. Can the Minister confirm whether that is also being accepted?
Well, I can confirm, as I've said to other colleagues, that that income threshold, and particularly how you resolve it at a family unit level, was part of the consultation. We've had, as I say, more than 200,000 replies, and we're looking at them closely.
Adam. Over 330,000 people have signed a petition urging the government to scrap plans from extending the ILR from 5 years to 10 years, especially the retrospective nature of it. This is going to have a real detrimental effect on the core of our society, especially in the NHS, and this will exploit workers, and they'll be very, very vulnerable to very exploitative bosses. So does the Minister agree, like many of his backbenchers do, that the government must stop this cruel proposal from taking effect?
Yeah. Well, the honourable gentleman knows, as I've said previously in this debate, that it's always been at the point of application that your settlement criteria, that is the governing criteria rather than the point of entering. He also will have heard from me that 1 in 30 people in this country came over the last 3 or 4 years, and therefore he will know that there is a significant problem for us to resolve here in terms of pressure on public service and fairness with the British taxpayer, and that's why we're looking at it so closely.
Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, some time ago in the Chamber there was a debate on fisheries. The Minister who replied from Defra said that they'd speak to the honourable gentleman and the Minister in particular to ensure they would have a meeting with us who represent fishing villages. There is a need for the visas for the fishing crews. Can I ask the Minister, please, would he have it? It won't cost any money to this country to have them here. They contribute to it. So would the Minister agree to a meeting, please? Thanks very much.
Minister.
I'll have, whether it's myself or the Minister for Migration and Citizenship, I'll ensure that meeting with regards to fisheries takes place.
Hussain, final question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents are deeply alarmed that retrospective changes to ILR could leave long-term residents living in fear of deportation. Will the Minister accept that leaving families across this country in a state of profound uncertainty risks undermining the very sense of security and fairness that our immigration system is supposed to uphold?
Minister.
I can't accept that. I know that the honourable gentleman will have seen that in our own settlement consultation we were very clear that coming here, working hard, contributing, paying your taxes, learning the language, taking part in your community, not committing crimes would get you that best route to settlement. I think that gives people the security they need.
I believe the Minister had a telling off earlier. Well, I just want to reiterate the problem. The scrapping of the grid may be something of the benefit for government. It is not beneficial to this House. This House doesn't want to be drip-fed 7 days via news. What we should do is come here first and then drip it for 7 days. We've got it the wrong way around. Hopefully the message goes back, no more. Right, we now let the front bench change over.